We're now going to look at Indices Rule 5. This rule applies to indices that have a fractional power. So down here we have an indice with a base of A and its power is a fraction. Now, first of all, the denominator of the fractional power tells us the root that we take of the base. The numerator of the fractional power can either go outside of the root or it can go underneath the root. It doesn't actually matter. So we're now going to apply Rule 5 to Part A. Part A says evaluate 9 to the power of 3 over 2. So the first thing we recognize is that we've got an indice and the base has a fractional power. Remember, the denominator of the fractional power tells you what root to take. So we're going to take the square root of 9. So that becomes the square root. Some people write a little 2 in here, but most of the time we don't. It just means the square root. So we take the square root of 9. And then I put brackets around the root. And then the outer power is the number that was on the numerator of the fractional power here. So the 3 goes outside. So what we do now is we work out the positive square root of 9. So in other words, we're trying to find a number that multiplies by itself to give 9. Well, that's just going to be 3. Put our brackets back in and then copy the power down outside. We now have 3 to the power of 3. Now, the power tells you how many bases are being multiplied. So the power is 3, so that means there are 3 bases of 3 being multiplied. So we write it as 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. And then finally, we just multiply the numbers together. 3 3s are 9, 9 3s will give us 27. And that's our answer, because remember, evaluate means your answer has to be a single numerical value without a visible power. Now, you can check it on your calculator to see if you've done it correctly. So on our calculator then, we can type in 9, hit our little Xbox button, and type in 3 over 2. Then hit equals, and it gives us 27. So it shows that we've done it correctly. So these types of questions would be in a non-calculator type paper, but you can use the calculator to check that you've done it correctly. Okay, let's look at Part B. So we have 64 to the power of 1/3. So we've got an indice with a fractional power. So we have to deal with a fractional power. The first thing we look at is the denominator of the fractional power. It tells us the root that we're taking of the base. So we're taking the cube root of the base. So put a little 3 in. Cube root of the base, which is 64. Then we put brackets around the root. Now, the numerator of the fractional power is the power that goes outside the brackets. So we just put the little one outside. First thing we're going to do is work out the cube root of 64. So we're looking for a number that multiplies by itself 3 times to give 64. And that's actually going to be 4. 4 4s are 16. 16 4s are 64. So we're going to get 4. Then copy your brackets in again and copy in the outer power of 1. Now, the power tells us how many bases are being multiplied. So there's only one base of 4 being multiplied. So therefore our answer is just going to be 4. And again, we've evaluated 64 to the power of 1/3. Our answer is a single numerical value with no visible power. Again, we can check it on the calculator to see if we've done it correctly. So we can type in 64, hit our Xbox button, and then type in 1/3. And then hit equals. 64 to the power 1/3 is going to give us 4. So it's a useful check. Okay, Part C. we have 4 over 25 in brackets, and then the outside power here is 3 over 2. Now, first thing we should notice, well, two things we should notice: the base is a fraction this time, but the base also has a fractional power. Now, we have to deal with a fractional power. The first thing we do is we go to the denominator. The denominator of the fractional power tells us what root we're taking. So we're taking the square root of the base. So we're going to take the square root of 4 over 25. Then put brackets around it. And then remember, the numerator of the fractional power is the power that goes outside the root here. So that little 3 goes there. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take the square root of 4 over 25. Now, when you take a square root of a fraction, that's the same as taking the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. So we can break up the square root here into 2 separate square roots when you've got a fraction. So I'm going to write that now as the square root of 4 over the square root of 25. Then put our brackets back in, and then copy down our outer power of 3. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, take the positive square root of 4. So we're looking for a number that multiplies by itself to give 4. Well, that's just going to be 2. And then that's over the square root of 25. Well, we're looking for a number that multiplies by itself to give 25, and that's just 5. And then copy our brackets in, and then copy down our outer power of 3. So we've got a base of 2/5. And its power is 3. Remember, the power tells you how many bases are being multiplied. There are 3 2/5 being multiplied. So we write it now as 2/5 multiplied by 2/5 multiplied by 2/5. So there's no cancelling here, so we just do our multiplying. So to multiply the top numbers, that's going to give us 8. And then multiply the bottom numbers, that's going to give us 125. And again, that's our final answer, because we're evaluating. Evaluating means your final answer has to be a numerical value with no visible power. And again, let's check it on the calculator. So again, I'm going to open brackets, hit fraction button, type in 4 over 25, close brackets, and then hit the Xbox button to get the power, and then make the power 3 over 2. And again, if we do this correctly, it should give us 8 over 125. And there you go. Okay, so obviously you should be doing these without a calculator, but you can use the calculator as a check. So that's how we apply Indices Rule 5. It applies when you have an indice with a fractional power. Remember, the denominator of the fractional power tells you the root that you take of the base, and then put brackets around the root, and then the numerator of the fractional power is the power that goes outside the root.